we do not take it for granted. And we know with time difference, a lot of persons are connected from different zones. So I want to say welcome, whatever the time zone is, happy good day, and thank you for joining us. At SP, we are so particular about safety, and we'll just dive right into the safety moments for the day one of this technical symposium and exhibition. So my name is Samuel Maxwell, and I'm the co-host for today. We will be partnering with Obianuju. She's also an MC, who will be emceeing as also the co-host for the event. So she's from SP Lagos, Uju Ubukwe, and I'm Samuel Maxwell from SP Benin. We today will be the master of ceremony, guiding the program as we go into the event. Okay, thank you very much for joining us once again. Next in line, we'll have our safety moments, as it will be displayed on screen by our technical guys behind the scene. Thank you very much. Safety moments. Just to let us know, we at SPE, not just Nigeria Council, but all over the world, SPE is particular about the safety of its members. And just as displayed on the screen, we have a few safety moments to ensure you are safe during the program, after the program, and whatever you are doing. Number one, be aware of your surroundings. We know the times are tough, so we encourage you to be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you know everywhere is good and calm before you give out some vital information. Also, please avoid while eating. Please avoid eating while you are talking to avoid getting choked. Being a virtual event, most of us are connected at home, most of us are in the office. So we just encourage you to please do not eat while you are talking to avoid getting choked. Now be mindful when making calls or receiving calls while in transit. We can't be too careful to know who's next to us. So we encourage you to be very careful and be mindful when making or taking calls while in transit. Now for the event of today's event is timed for 3 hours, and we'll be taking stretch breaks to enable us relax and get back into the conversation. Also stay hydrated, get a bottle of water by your side, and also ensure you take it at regular intervals so you stay hydrated. Now also last time for here today, we'll have COVID-19 awareness. Yes, we know COVID-19 is coming down in some countries, but other places are not so like that. So we have wash your hands. Also, when you go out, as you come in, wash your hands, wear your masks, ensure you have your sanitizers with you, avoid touching your face, stick to the guidelines in terms of gatherings. Also, when you want to cough into the elbow or use a handkerchief. And also when you feel any change in your body temperature or your state of mind or your health, kindly ensure you contact your nearest COVID-19 stations for assistance. And with that, I want to ensure we'll stay safe with God keeping us all. Thank you very much. At this juncture, I would like to yield the floor to our co-MC, Ms. Obianuju, to take us through the national anthem for this event. Over to you now.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. So if we don't mind, wherever we are, because we're about to take the national anthem, I would like you to, if you're moving, you need to stay still and please join us as we sing the national anthem. Thank you. God bless our nation. Thank you so much. Okay, so we go ahead with our agenda for today. And next up is our welcome address by the section chair. And the section chair is Mrs. Fanyama Okoli. Thank you. Mrs. Fanyama Okoli, please could you come up and give us your welcome address? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Uju. I will just quickly share my screen so you see my slides. Please confirm you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're really glad to have you as part of the SPE Lagos event today. My name is Fayama Okoli, Chairman of SPE Lagos. And at this time, I would like to welcome you to the event. I especially welcome our dignitaries who are here to speak to us about different perspectives of the theme this morning. I also welcome our fantastic audience that have joined from different parts of the world to be part of this great event where we get to hear and learn several perspectives on the topic. Now, I would also use this opportunity to introduce SPE and SPE Lagos in particular, so you can be part of us even some more after today. So with that, going on to my next slide. All right. SPE International has a vision, which this vision drives everything we do across different countries of the world. SPE's vision is to advance the oil and gas industry's ability to meet the world's energy demands in a safe, environmentally responsible and sustainable manner. This permeates through everything we do and all the programs we execute. We want to ensure that as leaders of the industry, we continue to champion innovations and technologies that support the energy demands of the world as it is today. And to execute this mission, we do that by collecting, disseminating, and exchanging technical knowledge sharing across different aspects of the oil and gas industry. And today we are advancing through the energy transition into a global energy mix that is suitable and sustainable for the earth and the climate. So we want to do this by advancing related technologies and identifying opportunities for professionals to enhance their technical and professional competence in the process of doing this. Now, I also want to highlight here that SPE is full of benefits for members. A number of these benefits I have shown, so that if you would like to be part of this body, it gives you great opportunities to advance both technically and professionally. And now coming back to SPE Lagos as a section among several other sections, we are hinged on 4 pillars, which we call ensuring growth, membership growth. We want to ensure that we grow our section, and we want to remain sustainable operationally, and we also want to give value to our members so that they enjoy the full benefits. This we look to execute through programs excellence, one of which is what you are part of today. SPE Lagos was established in 1973, a long time ago, and has over 1,600 members with about 7.6% growth. So we are part of the mega sections of SP International with 6 student chapters covered across the section. We ensure that we identify what's in it for each member. So across the different demographics of professionals, we categorize our programs for young professionals, mid-career professionals, senior professionals, and those who are in transition between industries. So with that, I will show us some of the programs we have held in the recent past, so many of which ensure that we give benefits to our members. And today, we are here today to talk about the annual technical symposium and exhibition of SPE Lagos. And this is being carried out in collaboration with SPE Uganda section. So we have our distinguished speakers here on the panel who are going to give us an in-depth insight into the energy transition as it relates to a strategic pathway for Africa. Now you will see that our panelists have been invited and they have responded from different parts of Africa. This is because we do not want to have a fragmented conversation. We want to ensure that business leaders from the different parts of the continent come together and give us a holistic discussion on the strategy that Africa will apply in getting to net zero. This is a 2-day event. We have another event happening tomorrow, and tomorrow's event is focused on a deep dive into what organizations are doing in the energy transition space. So we have invited senior leaders, business leaders from different companies who are doing amazing things to come and share their success stories with other business leaders in the room, thereby rubbing minds, discussing the value chain, finding solutions to problems, and identifying business models that will be suitable for the African markets. And with this, I welcome you all. I wish you a successful time here, and I look forward to a vibrant discussion in this panel session. Thank you and welcome once again. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fayama. Thank you, Fayama. Thank you very much for that opening speech. We appreciate it. Okay, next up on the agenda is introduction of the keynote speaker. Again, our keynote presentation is Energy Transition in Africa, a strategic pathway to net zero. Now, this keynote presentation is meant to be given by the Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources, Honorable Timipre Silva. Unfortunately, he is unavoidably absent, now carrying out some ministerial duties and won't be joining us just now. However, he will be ably represented by Engineer Justice Dere Faka. Now, before I hand over to Engineer Justice, I would like to read out Honorable Timipre Silva's bio. Now, appointed Minister of Petroleum Resources by President Buhari on 21st August 2019. His Honorable Minister, His Excellency Timipre Marlin Silva, is a man driven by strong vision and mission. As the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, His Excellency Silva has taken on remarkable strides in various areas of the oil and gas sector, in line with the set deliverables of President Mohamed Buhari for the ministry in various areas such as policy and regulation, gas revolution, Niger Delta, and security, amongst others. Now, long list of achievements by His Excellency. However, I'll mention a few of them. 1, he has led the completion of the phase 1 of Port Harcourt refinery rehabilitation exercise. 2, he has led the reopening of OML 25 flow station in Rivers State. So after 2 years of inactivity as a result of community issues between the host community, Belema Oil and Shell Petroleum Development Company, he has that OML 25 is now full of activity. Now, the third one, he has also synergized with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and was able to resuscitate oil production in the communities. And he was able to get youths of the area engaged, thereby combating communal unrest and bringing peace and stability to a community that was formerly ravaged by insecurity. Since assumption of office in August 2019, His Excellency Timipre Silva has championed the robust engagement with the National Assembly that saw to the passage and enactment of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome His Honorable Minister, His Excellency Timipre Silva, ably represented today by Engineer Justice Derefaka. Engineer Justice, you have the floor now, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Like the EMS rightly mentioned, the Honourable Minister, due to the exigencies of his office, is not able to attend today's session with you, and he has graciously asked me to represent and deliver his keynote address. And without further ado, permit me to deliver this keynote on the already established protocol. Unlike the Honourable Minister would always say, if the already established protocol is faulty, he wouldn't be held responsible. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Honourable Minister's speech. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFRO, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and its parastatals, I warmly welcome you all to the Society of Petroleum Engineers SPE Lagos Annual Technical Symposium and Exhibition, holding today, Tuesday, 17 May 2022. I am humbled and honored to be part of this year's symposium, which has been so fittingly themed, Energy Transition in Africa, a strategic pathway to net zero. And I believe at the end of this symposium, we are bound to achieve more efficient, coherent, and coordinated activities towards boosting energy access and developing Africa's energy sector, plus accelerating progress in scaling up investments in Africa's energy industry through dialogue and partnership. And the reason is simple. Our continent is home to 1/6 of the world's population and is already one of the world's most affected regions by climate change. And despite this, it contributes less than 6% of world energy consumption and about 2% of total global emissions. Africa has the ability to play a leading role and should play a leading role in the transition to net zero energy future. The continent's diverse geography provides enormous promise for natural resources, and our soils contain many of the minerals and rare earths required for clean energy technologies. No doubt there is more demand for energy in Africa and globally as the world population and living standards increase. Global energy demand will likely be almost 60% higher in 2060 than today. By 2070, the world is likely to be using at least 50% more energy than it does today as population grows and people seek to improve their quality of life. According to the International Energy Agency, IEA, renewable energy is expected to support the growth of electricity from 20% to 50% energy supply by 2050. The remaining energy demand that is impossible to electrify will require cleaner solutions, which can only come from natural gas, the closest ally to renewables. And I believe that in that context, a key decision and renewed impact we can make right now is to persist in expanding the role and opportunities of natural gas towards recovery and shared prosperity for a sustainable Africa and the world in general. Now, according to the United Nations estimates, the current world population of 7.6 billion is expected to reach 8.6 billion in 2030, 9.7 billion in 2050, and 11.2 billion in 2100. Now, half of that world's population increase is anticipated to occur in just 5 nations in Africa between 2017 and 2050. And the countries are Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it may interest you to know that Nigeria is the fastest growing country in the world. As a result, Nigeria's population, which is currently the world's 7th largest, is expected to overtake that of the United States of America and become the world's 3rd largest country by 2050. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that we will need more energy in Nigeria and, of course, Africa. The United Nations described energy as central to nearly every major challenge and opportunity the world faces, be it for jobs, security, climate change, food production, or increasing incomes. Access, they say, to energy for all is essential. Nevertheless, even today, little or no access to energy deprives part of the world's population of the opportunity to improve their quality of life. According to former UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, he said, energy is a golden thread that connects economic growth, increased social equity, and an environment that allows the world to thrive. His predecessor, Ghana's late Kofi Annan, called the failure to provide energy to all as one of the great injustices of the 21st century. Globally, 759 million people lack access to electricity, and our continent, the sub-Saharan African, account for 3/4 of the global population without access. Approximately 580 million people in sub-Saharan Africa lack reliable electricity, and that is 3/4 of the global population. Around 900 million people additionally are without access to clean cooking in Africa, and in 32 countries, more than 75% of the population are without access to clean cooking. Now, let me also mention that the world's 20 least electrified countries are in sub-Saharan Africa, where most of the global unserved population live. The foregoing does not mean it is all gloom and doom, ladies and gentlemen. The reason being that everyone in the world could have access to clean, affordable energy within the next 9 to 10 years if countries modestly increase investment, and this is according to UN's Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Annual investment of around $35 billion could bring electricity access for the 759 million people who currently lack it. And $25 billion a year can help 2.6 billion people gain access to clean cooking between now and 2030. Now, the required investment represents only a small fraction of the multi-trillion US dollar global energy investment needed overall. Ladies and gentlemen, a major question that is yet to be answered is whether Africa will benefit from an equitable share in this global investment and growth, or will continue to fall further behind global standards as encapsulated in the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It is well documented that Africa still has significant untapped fossil fuel reserves, which could provide much needed foreign direct investment and export revenue. Matter of fact, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, has said Nigeria and other African countries will not meet the SDG 7 target due to limited supply and access to electricity. So this is a wake-up call to all Africans. And UNECA noted that about $40 billion worth of investment per year is needed to meet the continent's energy needs. Now, despite the long-term and required drop in demand for fossil fuel, short-term demand and prices remain robust, which provides strong commercial justification for their extraction and a need to smooth the transition. Undiscovered but theoretically explorable and technically recoverable resources in Africa are estimated to be around 115.34 billion barrels of oil and 21.05 trillion cubic meters of gas. That's around 734.4 trillion cubic feet of gas. On their part, ladies and gentlemen, African governments typically have three major priorities when setting energy policies to bring in the desired investment. Number one, security of supply. Two, economic competitiveness. And three, a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. At present, only gas can meet all these priorities simultaneously. And using natural gas is already helping to reduce carbon dioxide and improve air quality where it replaces coal and diesel. gas also support an increasing role for renewables. And this will be important as the use of electricity expands. Gas will continue to play a critical role in sectors where demand is anticipated to grow, but which are more difficult to electrify. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, gas is what Africa and the world needs as we face up to a period of profound change. And this puts Nigeria with approximately 208.62 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves valued at over 803.9 trillion US dollars and a potential upside of 600 trillion cubic feet of gas, the most extensive in Africa and the top in 10 global, number 10 globally. And now, in line with the federal government's declaration of years 2021 to 2030 as a decade of gas, Nigeria is taking steps to expand and develop the nation's huge gas resources through enhanced gas exploration, development, and utilization schemes, which will lead to gas reserves growth, increased gas production, maturation of the domestic and export gas market, as well as gas flare elimination. The Decade of Gas initiative is aimed at transforming the Nigerian energy landscape to run effectively on natural gas. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, several high-profile developing market infrastructure funders are actively contemplating a blanket ban on fossil fuels that will prevent any new natural gas projects. For me, a ban on funding for gas fuel power in Africa will not help to mitigate climate change, but rather harm our continent's growth. Worst of it is that because gas is critical to Africa's transition to sustainable energy, a prohibition today might stifle renewables adoption and establish a global energy double standard. Luckily for Africa, the European Union has proposed labeling natural gas as a green source of energy, a development that could translate into huge economic value for Africa. Premised on the above, I urge African leaders to put in place robust and investor-friendly fiscal policies and regulatory frameworks to attract the needed funds to enable us meet and surpass the UN SDG 7 target. In Nigeria, the industry game changer, that is the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, will undoubtedly support Africa and indeed the global endeavor to alleviate energy poverty as envisioned in the UN SDG number 7. The PIA has generous incentives to enable development, distribution, penetration, and the utilization of gas, even as it incentivizes entry into the mainstream, especially for pipelines, with an additional 5-year tax holiday for investment in gas pipelines. The PIA is a supply-side enabler capable of provoking and triggering commercial interest and investment in gas utilization, as well as treating gas as a standalone commodity. Now, coming back to the energy transition, during the UN Climate Change Conference, tagged COP26 in November 2021 in Glasgow, Nigeria committed to achieve net zero by 2060. And barely a week after the conference, President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law the Climate Change Act 2021. The Act seeks to provide a framework for achieving low greenhouse gas emissions and to mainstream climate change actions into national plans and programs. Nigeria made a strong commitment to embrace this transition, pledging to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions under the Paris Climate Agreement, agreeing on a plan, and of course, establishing the National Council on Climate Change, which will have the power to make policies and decisions on all matters relating to climate change in Nigeria. This, ladies and gentlemen, is in addition to a pledge to reach net zero by 2060. Now, as a nation, we are following a transition pathway that combines technology, investment, business strategies, and government policy that will enable Nigeria to transition from its current energy system to a low carbon energy system, with natural gas playing a pivotal role over the next generation, roughly between now and 2060. Natural gas is a key resource for a just energy transition, and it has all the credentials to support Africa meet up with our commitment with the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. As a major source of wealth and energy in Africa, the development of oil and gas resources proves critical for our economic growth and revenue expansion. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in rounding up, I would like to mention that the campaigns demanding the immediate cessation of oil and gas production, as well as the denunciatory reports from environmental non-governmental organizations, blasting and slamming banks for continuing to finance fossil fuels have become fixtures of today's life in the West and of course in Africa. However, I would like to remind them once again that fossil fuels are not going anywhere soon. First off, Africa and the world need oil and gas for that matter. The world needs oil and gas because it is what the world relies on for its most basic needs. You and I know what is happening presently in all over the world as a result of the shortages of those supplies. And that will not change overnight. Therefore, African governments and leaders should continue to invest in oil and gas, even as we work to help speed progress to a lower carbon future. The International Energy Agency, for its part, has reversed its call for lower oil and gas spending. In just a few months, the industry think tank group has changed its tune and is now urging oil and gas companies to increase production. Multiple pathways, ladies and gentlemen, to the energy transition should and must exist in order to ensure that no country is left behind in the process of achieving net zero by 2060. And as a continent, we need to be intentional and recognize the need to develop hydrocarbon resources in environmentally and socially responsible ways. And as alluded to by the African Union, we need to be realistic in choosing the energy transition pathways which addresses our unique and peculiar requirements and circumstances, as well as enhancing policy, legislation, and of course, implementation approaches across national, regional, continental level to enable a favorable environment for development. We need to develop bankable projects to scale up access to funding and investment and adopt a mix of energy solutions to address the needs of each country, including solutions to high tariffs and accessibility to sustainable energy options. We need to promote energy efficiency, which is necessary for energy transition, and focus on building energy infrastructure and strengthening transmission corridors. In rounding up, ladies and gentlemen, as I have repeatedly advocated at different fora, for the aforesaid to happen and to achieve desired result, Africa needs to put modalities in place to establish an African energy bank to address our own peculiar energy-related crisis and take Africans out of the doldrum of energy poverty in line with SDG number 7. From the foregoing, I'm happy to inform this gathering that yesterday, Africa achieved a milestone in our fight against energy poverty. Our Pan-African Multilateral Trade Finance Institution, the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, has signed a memorandum of understanding with the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, for the creation of a multi-billion-dollar African energy bank at the ongoing 8th African Petroleum Congress and Exhibition in Luanda, Republic of Angola. Now, the Energy Bank would provide vital financing for new and existing oil and gas projects, as well as energy advancement across the world value chain, with the goal of increasing private sector investment in African oil and gas projects. The bank arrives at a critical time, ladies and gentlemen, for Africa's energy sector, following major oil company divestment and a shift in global investment trends. As I conclude, have in mind that the new realities of our industry offers both opportunity and challenges. In the end, if challenges are to be made and opportunities seized, the more cooperation is required amongst African leaders and our allies to develop a more detailed and just energy transition and a long-term development of the oil and gas industry. Let me also say this: individual government cannot do it all alone. We need to collaborate across a broad spectrum and dimensions. That is government, industry, academia, and especially regional institutions and professional associations like SPE and the continent think tanks and associations like the African Energy Chambers, AEC, African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, the African Union, AU, the African Energy Commission, AFREC, to make this happen. Let me assure you that Nigeria is ready, willing, and able to play its part in that regard, and we are counting on other African countries to do the same. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I implore us all to do our share so that posterity and indeed future generations will remember us favorably. Thank you for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the keynote address of His Excellency Chief Deputy Receiver, the Honorable Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that keynote presentation, Engineer Justice, on behalf of His Excellency Chief Tibi Prisiva, the Honorable Minister of State. We appreciate you. And from the keynote address, we've heard that the statistics are not actually in our favor. And one of the reasons is why we are here today, to help know how we can transition energy, how we can stay on foot in the energy transition in Africa. And doing that, you have told us that we need to get access to cleaner energy, more reliable energy, and just to provide more energy with the increasing statistics of the population, not just in Nigeria, but in other African countries. Once again, we thank you for that keynote speak on behalf of His Excellency, and we thank you for the time you have taken to come do that for us today. Thank you very much. And one of the questions raised during the keynote speak is, how do we achieve greener energy? How do we achieve cleaner energy? And today we have a panel session coming up next to provide answers on how we can be able to transition Africa to pathway for net zero. This morning we have a very judicious and rich panel session panelists as displayed on screen. I'll do justice by introducing the moderator who would be leading on the panel session. And as displayed on the screen, we have a profile for our moderator, Dr. Chijioke Mama, who is the special advisor as displayed on screen. I'll just read his profile, then hand over the floor to him to moderate the panel session for today. Dr. Chijioke Mama is a transaction advisor and the managing director of Mera Corp Nigeria Limited. He is also the special advisor on strategy and policy to the chairman of the governing body at the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Working in the oil, gas, and power sectors for over a decade, he has led and participated in diverse advisory and project implementation tasks in Nigeria, Africa, Europe, and North America. In addition to several engagements in renewable energy development, his most recent engagements have been in natural gas commercialization advisory and financial advisory for upstream and midstream project development, including raising debt and equity capital. Dr. Mama has been involved in building detailed commercial and financial business cases for ammonia/urea plants, NGLs, and CNG technologies in Nigeria. A gas commercial advisor for 2 major gas turbines OEM brands in Nigeria, and currently retains as natural gas commercial advisor for numerous Nigerian companies. His core areas of expertise include energy, finance, natural resources, and infrastructure development, and also a leading voice in the future energy adoption. Please, I know it's a virtual floor, and I'd like to yield the floor to our moderator for today, Dr. Chijioke Mama. Over to you now, sir, for the panel session.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Firemark, can you please enable the video for me?
Okay, please.
So I'd like to welcome you once again to today's panel session. The Honorable Minister's keynote has done justice to the topic for today, providing the background, making emphasis on the keywords that often colors debates like this around the world. And it's my pleasure today to moderate this session. And I would like to welcome all the panelists to the session. Just as a word of introduction, we have today in this panel, Mr. Kamel Ben Nasser, who is the President, Society of Petroleum Engineers International. We're also delighted to have in the panel, Madam Proskovia Nabanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Uganda National Oil Company. We also have Madam Kani Jobe, who is the Director of Exploration and Production at the Gambia National Petroleum Corporation. We also have in this distinguished panel, Mr. Victor Bandele, who's Deputy MD, Deepwater for Total Energies, and my humble self, Dr. Chijo Kemama, who will be moderating the session. I was hoping that we could read small bios or profile of the panelists, but unfortunately I do not have it. The MC, do you want to do this if you have the bio for proper context?
Yes, we can. We can read them and we can see the bio. Okay, can we scoot over to Mr. Ayuk to start from the beginning, please? Okay, so we have Mr. NJ Ayuk, who is the Executive Chairman, African Energy Chamber. So Mr. Ayuk is Executive Chairman of the African Energy Chamber. He is CEO of Pan-African Corporate Law Conglomerate, Century Law Group, and the author of Big Barrels, as well as Amazon and Wall Street Journals. Best-selling Billions at Play, The Future of African Energy and Doing Deals. His experience includes advising major companies on investment strategies, the establishment of joint ventures and corporation structures, privatization, licensing, and related tax matters, Ohada law, oil and gas, power, local content development, litigation, contracts negotiation, governance, and other matters pertaining to Africa's energy sector. His experience also includes facilitating and negotiating PSCs, EPSAs, JOAs, service agreements, concessions, oil field service, and drilling contracts. And he also deals with licensing and pipeline and marine transportation issues, including the sale and transportation of LNG in over 15 African countries. Thank you, Mr. Ayuk, for being part of our panelists.
Thank you, it's an honor.
Welcome, sir. So next up, Maxwell.
Okay. Next up, we have Mrs. Proscovia Nabanja, the Chief Executive Officer, Uganda National Oil Company. And as displayed on screen, Mrs. Proscovia is the Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda National Oil Company and charged with executing the company's 5-year corporate strategy and plans, managing the business aspects of state participation across the petroleum value chain, including upstream, refining, transportation, and storage, and identifying new commercial viable investments for the company. Proscovia has 19 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, formerly served as the principal geologist and the Petroleum Exploration and Production Department under the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. She headed the technical division and was at the forefront of reviews of technical proposals, especially field development plans and petroleum reservoir reports. She has sat on different interministerial committees and worked on several donor-funded programs, such as Oil for Development and USAID. Proscovia holds a BSc in Chemistry and Geology from Makerere University, Kampala, MSc Petroleum Geoscience from Imperial College of Science, Technology, and Medicine, DICD Petroleum Management and Operations, MBA from Imperial College. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mrs. Proscovia Nabanja. It's very much a pleasure to have you with us.
Okay. So next up is Kamel Ben Nasser, who is the CEO for Nomadia Energy Consulting. He's based in Abu Dhabi and previously the chief economist for Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC. as well as the Director of Sustainability, Technology and Outlooks at the International Energy Agency previously. Appointed Tunisia's Minister for Industry, Energy and Mines in 2014, and held key positions with Schlumberger, including Chief Economist and Technology President from 1981 to 2013. With over 40 years of experience and knowledge in the energy and industry sectors around the world, in both public and private service. He is the co-author of 19 books and over 150 publications. He has received several SPE AIME awards, including the Distinguished Member, the Distinguished Service, AIME, Charles Randgold Memorial, and the Sustainability and Stewardship in the Oil and Gas Industry Award. And he was a SPE Distinguished Lecturer. He is a graduate from École Polytechnique Paris and École Normale Supérieure Paris. You're welcome, Kamel. Thank you for joining the discussion.
Thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You're welcome, sir.
Next on the panelists is Kani Job, the Director of Exploration and Production, Gambia National Petroleum Corporation. Kani Job is currently the Director of Exploration and Production at the Gambia National Petroleum Corporation, where she advises on oil and gas exploration projects and structures, negotiates and oversees the implementation of high-value exploration activities of NOC/IOC joint ventures and partnerships. Her work experience spans energy projects in Australia, where she worked with a multidisciplinary team that investigated the optimum development strategy for the Browse LNG field, South America drilling in the Lake Maracaibo and West Africa. She was recognized in the 2021 Power List of 50 Inspiring Pan-African Female Leaders in Energy by Lane in Energy, named as one of 100 outstanding female executives in the African oil and gas industry by African Shapers, and recently honored with the winning the Women Award by Energy Advance and the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria. Kani is happily married and raising two boys to be the next generation of gender champions. Her hobbies include traveling, reading, cooking, and occasional meal, and indulging her sense of style. Thank you very much for joining us today, Kani. Kindly confirm you can hear us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next up is Mr. Victor Bandele, who is the Deputy Managing Director, Deepwater Total Energies, Nigeria Limited. He was previously the Executive Director in charge of the company's Port Harcourt Joint Venture District, overseeing activities of the three main technical divisions. A quintessential professional, he has held important positions in operations, projects and management within Nigeria and overseas. And these include serving as GSR manager for the first deepwater development project executed by Total Energies in Nigeria. He was Executive General Manager, GSR and Assets Management within the Joint Venture District, and worked as Petroleum Architect in the Development Studies entity at Total Energies headquarters in Paris. He returned to the Nigerian subsidiary as Executive General Manager, Special Duties in 2015, and later appointed to the Board of Directors of Total Energies EP Nigeria Limited. Mr. Victor Bandele graduated from the University of Ilorin in 1989 with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and he is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Mr. Victor, you are highly welcome, and thank you for joining us. Kindly confirm your...
Thank you so much. I am with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I guess we will get into the business of the day right away. Further to the background already provided, the energy transition is a movement around the world but there are many perspectives or narratives around it. There is no global consensus on what is a best approach for the transition. Some regions of the world, like Africa, feel that the current tone of the discussion places Africa at a disadvantaged position. And I think that is the crux of the discussion this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. I would like to begin this panel session by inviting Mr. Ayok, who is obviously one of the loudest voices in the advocacy for a just transition in Africa. Being the chairman of Africa Energy Chamber, he has vigorously argued that the current tone of the discussion is not profitable or beneficial to African nations. Mr. Ayok, my first question to you this morning is, what is a balanced approach to the transition? What do you consider to be a just pathway to the transition, given that Africa, while being endowed with tremendous fossil resources, is also equally endowed with significant renewable energy resources in the form of solar and wind? Mr. Ayok, please.
Doctor, thank you so much. And I could not be more happy to be part of this panel with people who are more qualified and smarter. Nobody could do this better than having justice. So going after justice is always very difficult, but I think with Proscovia and Kani and Samuel, I think it's an amazing group to be part of. I am dialing from Angola, and one of the key things we just did here yesterday was to get Afreximbank and the African Petroleum Producers Organization really push on something which we had started to be able to finance our own energy transition, if depending on where you stand on that. Africa has changed, our industry has changed. There is a big transition movement, but if you really want to talk about a just energy transition, we have to have a real dialogue on that. Today, you have a lot of people going around, for example, in Europe, basically saying you shouldn't have the East African crude oil pipeline. And there's just many instances. I think it's a little bit dishonest to have Africans and say, well, you need to leave it in the ground. When you got Mozambique just having amazing discoveries and they just right set to move in, and you look at Namibia with billions of barrels being discovered. But what has happened after COP26, which some of us were lucky to participate? In January of this year, Norway gave out 52 oil licenses. In February, the US opened all federal lands for drilling. At the same time, the United Kingdom would be opening coal mines in the first time in 30 years. At the same time, the UK just announced that they're going to have a licensing round at the end of this year. And Germany is going to start building new LNG terminals. Germany is important, more coal than ever since COP26. And then here are we in Africa talking about a transition and saying we need to decarbonize. Yes, Europe needs to, the answer to a balanced transition is that Europe needs to decarbonize and Africa needs to industrialize. That's where we stand. But we still have to deal with the issues around energy poverty. These powerful nations, they are ramping up, they're getting more energy access to their people, and then we come with this strange theory and say, well, we have to shut down. How are you going to shut down when you talk? Go tell that story to a mother in the Gambia who is having a C-section and has no light in that hospital. Go tell that story to a young woman who is trying to get education and can't find lights. Go tell that story to a father who is sitting there and having to make a choice, whether I'm going to take that straight across the Mediterranean to Europe or get energy access. We've talked about it enough. 600 million people without any kind of electricity. It's not right. 900 million with no access to clean cooking, most of them women. And then we talk about ESG. So it's quite easy for some of us, we have things who are privileged to be able to sit back and say, let's decarbonize. How are you going to tell me that we have to get electric cars and all of that in Africa when we don't have power to charge those electric vehicles? It's like sometimes we get into smoking osmosis and we don't really have to bring it home. And I think we need to be more practical. What do you talk about the balanced approach? Yes, we can do wind. Yes, we can do solar. But can we really power our industries and create enough jobs with wind and solar? Can we really power, even in the countries where you've had wind and solar generation, can we do that? It's not possible. Fossil fuels are still abundant and plentiful. And yes, gas, it is time. But we also have that balanced approach comes with, I mean, let's just get to the numbers, and I'm going to stop here because there's some really smart people who have to also educate me. But let's just get to the numbers. Outside South Africa and North Africa, we're at 0.5%. So I'm not a scientist, but you don't decarbonize something that is not even carbonized. So what is there to really, really take out of our system of Africa at a time when we really need to drive? So yes, we should use wind, we should use solar, we should, now they're talking green hydrogen, we should do that. But somebody has to finance it, and it's not going to be aid. And if you get rid of fossil fuels, as they're saying, what are you going to do? They promise you, and I'll end with this. They promise you $100 billion for the entire developing world. 2009, Kyoto. What has happened with that in 2022? That's $1.3 trillion that they pledged that it should have been into entire developing country. That's nothing. But they haven't delivered on that. They have just done just $25 billion. So we in Africa, we want aid, we want charity. Even the aid and the charity is not coming. Let us do for ourselves what we expect others to do, but then we change our policies. We create the right fiscal environments, the right regulatory environments. We drive up our markets, create jobs, create opportunities so that we can give people a fighting chance to have a future, but with Africa's energy. And gas should be able to drive that future rather than us relying on just wind or solar. These cosmetic projects, they're good, they're inspirational, but somebody has to pay for it.
Thank you very much. That was quite insightful. Everybody knows how passionate you are about these conversations. And I'm very delighted to hear that the long-awaited issue of an energy bank for Africa, has now received the right kind of attention, and that will be very instrumental to the optimal development of our abundant hydrocarbon resources in the region. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayok. My next question goes to Madam Kani, who is part of the Gambian hydrocarbon industry, and out of which we are also hearing delightful news about renewable energy development. So, Madam, please, can you share with us what the Gambia is doing around renewables, particularly the government's multi-million-dollar program called REPGAM? Please, could you share some insights or highlight important aspects of that program and how it's promising to influence energy poverty and energy access in the Gambia?
Okay, can you hear me? Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm very pleased to come on the heels of Mr. NJ Ayik, who I like to call the energy superstar for Africa. He does such an amazing job, at advocating for a balanced approach to the energy transition and to a just transition for Africa. I greet you from the smiling coast of West Africa. We're a very tiny nation, but you may know us as the only country in the world that has been recognized to be meeting its NDCs, that's the National Development Contributions to the Paris Agreements. Initially, it was just the Gambia and Morocco that were on track. That shows you that the size of the country is not really an influence in how well we do meet our national development contributions. And as of 2021, I was very mightily proud and pleased that we were able to represent the the African continent to show that indeed African nations are very committed to developing and exploring renewable energy projects, and that the global advocacy for energy transition and clean energy is not lost on Africa. We remain committed to the SDG 7 goals and have been working towards clean energy in our energy mix through several initiatives and policies. So I'm pleased to give a high-level overview of the REPGAM initiative. Basically, the overall aim of the project is to provide renewable energy to selected government institutions and communities in the Gambia. And the specific objectives are basically to enhance renewable energy for economic development and increase the per capita energy consumption in the Gambia, increase access to electricity, especially in the rural areas, and more importantly, research on the socioeconomic and environmental benefits of REUs in the Gambia. Now, the project is a 4-phase project. It actually just kicked off last year in June 2021. June 2021. And so the total installed electricity capacity of the Gambia has increased about 30 megawatts in 2019, but we have issues with available capacity because of poor distribution and transmission networks. So the REPGAM project is basically exploring the solar use in the Gambia. And right now, the project is in the project communication and management phase, which is gonna go on for a year. And then the next year we'll move into actually developing renewable energy solutions, demonstrating smart renewable energy monitoring and evaluation. So I'm not intimately associated with the project. I focus more on exploration for both oil and gas, and particularly focus on how we can utilize gas as a bridging fuel for Africa in the future. But of course, I'm very pleased, I'm very passionate about renewable energy in general. And so I am happy to just give this high-level overview and answer any other questions that we may have about REPGAM. We do have other renewable energy initiatives that we are part of. For example, in 2018 too, the Gigawatt Global Cooperative signed a deal with ECOWAS for 15 nations to build 1 billion watt of renewable energy projects, using mainly the West African power pool. But then I would just like to divert a little away from this and say that it really is important that it is recognized that we must own our own narratives and control our own transition agenda, and that exploring renewables is not coming at the cost of exploring for our fossil fuels, which we are blessed with, and for which we need to power our own industrialization. The West has powered on the backs of fossil fuels. It's cheaper. Renewable energy is still yet to catch up in technology. And so while we explore, we are going to keep finding ways of balancing the energy mix. So it is not, exploring one at the expense of the other. I see no reason why Africa should not be able to, and especially a small frontier country like Gambia, should not be able to explore its favorable geographical positioning as regards solar, as regards hydropower, as regards geothermal energy, or whatever else energy we are blessed with. But at the same time too, if we are also blessed with oil and gas and fossil fuels, I don't subscribe to a neo-colonialist agenda that tells us what is good for us. What are we transitioning from? We don't have energy access. In the Gambia, we've recently made great strides, and we used to have 40% energy access. Recently, it has gone up to 50%. But if you ask me to talk to the energy transition about a village woman who has no energy access, who uses biomass, she's going to ask me, what are we transitioning from? I don't have electricity. Am I going to progress to electricity first before transitioning? So, I think discussions such as these are really important because it helps us to frame the right questions about how do we achieve a balance. The better questions that we ask, the closer we are to the answers. We must really, in tandem with renewable energy development, develop and explore for our resources. We need more exploration, not less exploration. And exploration covers sun, it covers wind, it covers solar, it covers hydro, and it covers fossil fuel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One key takeaway from your speech is what are we transitioning from? And that buttresses the earlier speakers' assertions that, first of all, we have to provide energy to our people. And in doing that, optimize other endowments that we have, and then begin to consider the potential role of renewables in the future. But our primary concern should be optimizing whatever it is we have for reducing energy poverty in the region. Thank you very much, Madam, for that wonderful speech. So I would like to, as a continuation, I would like to ask Mr. Victor Bandele, who is a Deputy MD in Total. Total is known to have a significant footprint in the renewable energy space in terms of your solar products and other strategies that you have deployed both in Nigeria and around the world. So we would like to hear from you. What has the journey been for Total so far, being a legacy hydrocarbon company, now pursuing renewable energy development aggressively? What are the lessons? What has been the pitfalls for Total as an organization?
Yes, thank you so much. And I think the planning of this panel discussion is so suited. Having me to come after my friend, online friend, Mr. Ayuk, and Kani from the Gambia. I think it's a fantastic forum to really expatiate on strategies, and this is very welcome. So Total Energies, we changed from being Total to Total Energies last year. It's not by just wish to just add energies to our name. It's that we've really realized that the future is sweeter as an energy company rather than an oil and gas based company. And when you look at the antecedents of Total, is that we've come a long way. So at the time, we're mostly an oil company. And with time, the gas component became very strong. And I dare say that in Nigeria at the beginning, there were lots of mismanagement of the gas resource. And this is not just common to Total as Total Energies as a company, but when you look at the full business comportment of the country at the time, we were so biased for oil. In fact, when I was joining the industry in early 90s, when you drill a well and you find that the well is gas bearing, there is a notion that you could call that a failure, at the time. So all companies have evolved over time, and I think Total Energies has also evolved from just being mindful of oil business, but have included in its portfolio now a substantial component of gas. Now the future is different, and I think we all align with the world initiatives of reducing the carbon footprints worldwide. So Total Energies worldwide is trying to be in the front, and I think we've achieved that. We're on the forefront of the global transition to reducing the carbon footprints in the world. And I make that distinction. In the world, we are fully aligned in that process. Now, I will come back quickly to Nigeria because I think that's one area where I want to put emphasis, Nigeria and Africa generally. What we have realized, we had an enormous meeting in 2019, and we're looking at the status of Africa and the approach that we should have for Africa. We identify with the governments all across Africa that the transition that we expect to have in Africa is to reduce the carbon footprint by being less oil and be extremely aggressive on gas. So gas for us is a very important element to the transition, because first, when you listen to my friend Ayuk and Kani, there is first, a hunger for energy in Nigeria, in Africa. There is a hunger for energy. We don't have enough. So there's a deliberacy that goes with this, and we need to first achieve the energy mix or energy level that will even satisfy our needs before wanting to say we abandon one type of energy and we move into the other. So in Total Energies, our focus is to satisfy the energy need of the people first. And that means we have to explore for oil and gas in a more reasonable way, in a more proficient way, in a more efficient way, such that we will not be reckless in bringing high carbon components into the mix. And we do that with all, today as I speak, I have wells to be drilled in 2022-23 that are exploration well targeting oil and targeting gas. So we're not stopping in that mode. We have to continue that. But when we're looking at the mix, we're also increasing the component of gas in all that we do to make sure that we sustain the energy requirement, or in fact, build up to the energy requirement of countries all around. And we'll talk about Total. We see ourselves as the big player in Africa. We are present in more than 10 countries of Africa in exploration and production. So really, we are in the forefront, and we continue to do this. So as said by Kani and Ayuk, we are not reducing energy mix of fossil energy, especially in Africa. We are more disciplining ourselves to increase the efficiency of our installations, to be able to treat the products that we emit in a way that we do not flare. And I will say this clearly, I'm more comfortable to talk about what we've been doing in Nigeria. From as far back as the 2000s, we have stopped all projects that would bring to the fore since the year 2000 have been designed such that we don't have routine flaring. So this is very remarkable, and I think it's what puts Total at an edge. So we flare down significantly on all projects that were existing that had some sort of high carbon footprint. So we've completely, we have flare outs in many of our platforms. In 2014, for example, we were deliberate in putting in place a facility offshore that treats all the gas coming out of 2 of our OMLs, and all these gas are now monetized instead of being flared. We call it an orphan project, for which we got a World Bank recognition for having contributed to reducing carbon footprint in the world. That is as far back as 2014. So you see that our drive had been to reduce the carbon footprint without increasing the quantum of energy that is available. So we continue along that trend, and we have recently accepted and agreed that every other project that we are putting on stream now, that is an oil and gas biased project, we need to accompany it with a renewable energy project that goes hand in hand. So if I'm thinking of bringing on a new field that is oil and gas biased, I need to have a small project that is purely renewable energy. And we play these along each other to really demonstrate that, okay, while we emphasize on the need to meet the market, we are not oblivious of the fact that we also require to begin to think about the future, because Total Energies is in Africa, and it's in Africa for the long term. We are not looking at things in the short term alone. I think I can stop there to give opportunity to get more questions, and I'm really prepared to go in depth as the questions come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor. The essence of your speech, is that Total is quite aware that we need to develop hydrocarbon resources responsibly, And in spite of its footprints in that industry, it's still very much interested in pursuing sustainable development agenda. And that brings me to our SPE president, Mr. Kamel. My question to you is, of course, this is a petroleum industry event, and you're a leader in the petroleum engineer community or industry association around the world. Now we have heard from Mr. Victor what Total Energies is doing as a leader in this industry as well in terms of carbon emission reductions. But my question to you is, what is the mood or the plan within SPE as a community in terms of abatement technologies for this industry?
No, thank you very much. I want to congratulate the SPE Lagos section, and I want to welcome all the participants. I see about 150 participants. It's a great pleasure to be with you. So from a SPE standpoint, we very strongly believe that a sustainable future will require, one, meeting the sustainable development goals set by the United Nations, which is in terms of energy access, are very important, extremely critical for Africa, given the sheer number of people that don't have access to electricity and do not have access to cooking, modern cooking methods. So that's extremely critical. The second one is ensuring that we have clean air in our major cities, and we will see a number of mega cities emerging from the African continent. And then the third one is obviously the decarbonization of the energy. And so these are the three parts of the sustainable energy future. And if we look at developed economies versus developing economies, the figure of $100 billion of financial flow was mentioned earlier by a panelist. I think we're extremely far from where we should be. Just to make the math, look at the math. The world today emits about 35 gigatons of CO2 per year coming from the energy sector. 35 gigatons. 70% come from developing economies, while 30% come from developed economies. So pretty roughly about 20 billion tons come from developing economies. And so there should be financial transfers. And if I just put a very rough number, $50 per ton of CO2 as an abatement cost, the fluxes that should go to the developing economies should be $1 trillion per year, not $100 billion per year, 10 times more than what is being discussed. And this is for the world to have a fair trajectory. So that's the first one. Now you asked me about the SPE mood. We have come from one of the most drastic crises in the energy sector, especially the oil and gas, with the pandemic. It had a major impact on the supply and demand of oil and gas. And let's not forget that only 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was another major hit on the investment in oil and gas. So within 6 years, we have seen almost 50% reduction in the upstream investment. And that is creating a big toll to our industry. Now, we consider that the 20% increase of investment in 2022 compared to 2021 is a good news for the industry and the world, but that is still not sufficient to balance markets. And we see the sensitivity of the markets to any geopolitical event that is taking the prices to levels that we see. We talk a lot about oil prices, but then also gas prices. If I take LNG markets in Japan, Korea, while they were only about $4 per million BTU a year ago, now they are at $35 per million BTU, almost a 10 times increase in prices. And so that is hitting all the world in terms of affordability of energy. So we strongly believe that the world needs access to secure, affordable, and cleaner energy. And in that trajectory, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and flaring is critical. Our industry, between the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream, emits about 17% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And it's time that our industry does the maximum to reduce them in terms of using the latest technologies, whether they are satellite-based imaging or near surface or surface-based determination of CO2 emissions. We do have the technologies to do it. We believe that the energy transition will require a large share of oil and gas, and Africa plays a very critical role in this primary mix for the coming decades. But it's not only oil and gas. What we are seeing are countries in Africa that are looking at hydrogen in terms of an additional supply. And we see countries like Morocco, countries like Mauritania, and even South Africa looking at hydrogen as a potential source for export, but also internal use. We believe also that carbon capture and storage will be a key carbon abatement options, provided cost of capture is reduced and storage security being properly assessed. We strongly believe that our industry has the technologies on the storage side to ensure that we are storing safely the CO2 emissions below the ground. And the SPE is currently developing with sister societies a new system for CO2 storage assessment. It's called the Storage Resource Management System. And this is analogous to our petroleum resource management system. And it allows the industry, the regulators, to have a way of characterizing the amount of pore space that could be available for storage. So that's where we are today in the SPE, and we are supporting the development of our members, not only in oil and gas, but also in what we call peripheral sectors of the energy, and that is including carbon capture and storage. This is also including hydrogen. It's also including geothermal, because they all use the great expertise of our members. Thank you so much for your attention.
I would like to just proceed to invite Madam Proskovia, who is the CEO of Uganda National Oil Company. I think most of the earlier speeches provide some context, into where you are and what you're doing. Your country and your organization is considered relatively a new arrival, in the hydrocarbon play, especially within the sub-Saharan African context. other nations like Nigeria, Angola being the old place. And to the delight of most Africans who are concerned about energy poverty in the continent, your country reached FID in 2022, this year, February, in collaboration with your other partners, Total Energy.
Sorry, moderator, I lost you a bit on the question. Sorry, moderator, I lost you a bit. Is everyone able to hear me?
I can actually hear you.
I can hear you very well.
Okay, so it's good to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. It's exciting times to be part of this conversation. And I think there's a couple of lessons we've learned as Uganda from the process of attaining final investment decision, which we did recently in February. Of course, some of the lessons we've learned is that the project is integrated in nature, straddling from upstream to midstream segments, requiring a lot of capital investment, and the fact that it also requires a lot of protracted negotiation to cover all the player interests. We've also learned the fact that the process involves a lot of cross-border negotiations that require intergovernment commitments, enabling legislation. We've also learned that there's a lot of policy reviews, legal and regulatory framework that are necessary to make the project bankable, the institutional framework to set up a good template to govern the oil and gas industry. And we've also learned for sure that it's very paramount for us to prepare adequately for local participation. So as Uganda, there's a national content policy and law that was set up to enable Ugandans adequately participate in the oil and gas sector. But it's also been a lesson that during the protracted negotiations, it's paramount for government to always relook at the fiscal incentives that would make the project commercially viable and bankable. The process certainly involves a lot of stakeholders in order to manage the expectations. Of course, FID was anticipated for so long. Remember that commercially viable resources were discovered in 2006, and therefore it has taken quite a journey for us to achieve FID. So the main drivers for having a bankable project that would meet the investment criteria, at least through the process we've learned, the necessity for government approvals, the authorizations, the environmental and social impact considerations, a stable fiscal regime, and of course, maintaining the appetite for financing, a robust execution plan, and risk management plan. But ultimately, it's always going to be a win-win for every project participant. But what does this mean for Uganda? Of course, it means that we've unlocked the single highest value project in the history of Uganda. Of course, the oil and gas sector will attract investment to a tune of $15 billion in Uganda, with a net revenue projection estimated at about $47 billion in an economy that is currently standing at about $35 billion. And any of the projects we are dealing with for sure has an internal rate of return in excess of 15%, which gives us that business impetus to invest. And we see a lot of benefits from both macro and micro level. Of course, foreign direct investment, the revenues that we are going to generate, the improvement of the GDP, the improvement of balance of payments to a tune of $591 million US per year for the refinery project, import substitution. We have metrics related to national capital formation of close to $8.3 billion US for the refinery, 12 billion for the industrial park, net fiscal impact of over $800 million US per year. And of course, a driver to retain close to 40% of contracts to local content. We've invested close to $1 billion US on infrastructure development, technology and skills transfer. And then we anticipate jobs of close to 160,000 across the spectrum, and also spurring of industries through the value addition process for the refinery, and ultimately attracting more investment. So we speak about these numbers because oftentimes our colleagues, the environmental activists, get the picture a little bit wrong, because much as we talk about the energy transition and the drive towards a cleaner environment, we shouldn't forget the social good that these projects can contribute to our economies. So are we on track to achieve first oil by 2025? Absolutely, yes. Since FID in February 2022, we've gone into project execution. Most of the Tier 1 contracts have been awarded and the groundbreaking has been done. So we're still committed to achieving first oil by 2025 or earlier. And because of the commitment to the project, most of the other spin-off projects are also on track, like the discussions related to the refinery FID, which we anticipate to achieve during the course of next year. So yes, FID happened. It's an exciting moment for us. We see a lot of macro and micro level benefits for the country, and we are still on track to achieve first oil by the first half of 2025. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, madam. My apologies, I got disconnected earlier on. I was wondering if you heard my question, fully prior to my disconnection, but thank you. I believe the response is suitable answers to the question. Thanks once again. May I return to you, Mr. Ayok? You have heard Madam Proskovia's speech, what Uganda is trying to do to optimize the development of its newly found, hydrocarbon resource. So my question to you would be, amidst your advocacy for natural gas, Africa Energy Chamber is at the forefront of that campaign for the optimal development of natural gas precisely, in Africa. What do you believe are the optimal collaboration or partnership frameworks within the region for moving forward, especially in the light of limited capital, from our indigenous or local banks, and the funding apathy that we see for fossil, from the Western nations? A good example is what you mentioned earlier on, the African Energy Bank. That's one form. You could elaborate on the promises of a collaboration framework like that as suitable for financing, and then other possible partnership frameworks that could enhance either technical development or other aspects, of the value chain. Mr. Ayok, please.
Doctor, thanks for that. I think what you have right now with the Afro-Exim Bank and Apple are doing, it should serve as a catalyst. It should not serve as that's the only thing that should happen. We need to have 50, 100, even 200 financial institutions driving up energy in the continent. The biggest mistake we can do is to say there is one bank. We've tried that in the past with African Development Bank. What happened? To even go from A to B, it's a full-blown process that never happens. We need to stop. We need to create these institutions and do many. And why do we need it right now? Last week, I saw a video of young kids basically forcing the French president to interfere in private action and private development by Total Energies to stop a sovereign state action from happening in Uganda. You've seen Friends of the Earth really go out there and they go into court to block any kind of financing. The European Investment Bank is saying, we're not going to finance anything that is called fossil fuels. But that was when, for them, they said now gas is green. You know, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but I don't know how you make a decision in November at COP and say gas is bad, and then 2 months later, you say gas is green. That's the kind of issues that we have with a lot of this. So what do? We need to have this collaboration. You got $2 trillion in Africa right now. You have guys working marginal fields around Nigeria, and they can find 20 to 25 to 30 million to develop those fields. You look at gas to power projects, we can't find that. You have to go abroad. Why don't you look within? Look at how much we spend. Look at how much we waste in this continent. And sometimes you might be, a lot of people say you're crazy for saying this. Of course, you have to be crazy if you look at their abject poverty, and if you look at a lot of young people that their only hope is to cross the Mediterranean or the Sahara to go abroad. So what do? We get back into using our pension funds. You put your pension funds into big European and American banks and financial institutions that have a policy not to fund you. You are funding your own energy poverty. You are funding yourself to poverty while somebody else is using your money to grow their economies, and you impoverish yourself. So we need to have that. But look at our taxes. Where do we have our tax dollars go through? So I don't just think it's something that we have to rally the funds and say we need to go out there and drill some big deep water wells like my colleague from Total Energies was saying. No, but we need to have funding for maybe gas to power projects. Maybe we drive our own renewable projects rather than begging for aid from Europe, because it wouldn't come. And when it comes, it has some stiff conditions that is really going to hurt us. Maybe we will look at even driving small scale LNG, small mini grids, everything. But we create access, we create opportunity, then we nurture it. And I'm happy we have Kani and Proskova here. You know, they will not like me saying this, but the truth of the matter is that we need to call government to actions. They need to create that environment. They need to look at our fiscalities, because at the end of the day, it's about money. The fiscal terms do matter. They got to be more pragmatic on how they move, and they need to move faster. There's no need to have these delays. There's no need I mean, we need to look at a mirror. Okay, now end with this. You know, every morning you get up and look at a mirror. Mirrors are not just to reflect what you see. Mirrors are to correct what you see. We should use those mirrors and correct what we see right now. Let's stop complaining. Let's start doing. And I think with that kind of collaboration, and you get business actors coming together, really driving that, then we can really push that and get our economies moving, get energy access to people. You know how much money you can really make if you can get energy to 600 million that don't have it? That's why the Europeans are so gung-ho about stopping oil and gas, because they will be able to provide solar, wind, everything to so many Africans. We are going to be consumers forever. Let's turn it around and become suppliers. Supply side economics helps, rather than just being internal consumers of everything that comes from abroad and we're not driving it. 2 billion people in Africa, 2050. 180 million in Europe. Imagine if 180 million supplying power to 2 billion, they will be always rich and you'll be always poor because you'll be waiting. Let us provide power to the 2 billion and get money moving around Africa and get rid of these visas. You can't say you want money and capital to move around Africa, but you can't get people moving around Africa. I mean, you get more people coming from Europe into Africa without visas and Africans visiting their neighbors. So we start doing those things and we take those corrective measures, but we got to move fast. We got to move quick. No need for delays.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. That tone of exigency is at the basis of all of the debate around Africa, within organizations, within institutions, in government circles, that we are at a very, poor, regrettable position in terms of energy access, and that should not be lost on us, as we make all policies and plans for advancing energy within the region. I would like to ask Madam Proskovia, as your organization pushes forward, for your new oil and gas discovery, new relatively, what do you consider to be the necessary steps to be taken for responsible development, or to depict a country or an organization that is aware of net zero commitment or consent going forward? What kind of renewable thoughts should be accompanying your fossil-free development in Uganda?
Thank you so much. Indeed, a very interesting question, but I think we need to step back and look at the visions for most of the African countries that are driven by industrialization targets. Of course, for Uganda, Vision 2040 targets utilization of oil and gas to achieve middle income status and also boost industrialization. Now, when you look at the current consumption of petroleum products in Uganda, we stand at about 6 to 7 million liters a day, and we estimate a growth of about 7% annually, but with a potential spike of 9% because of the ongoing massive infrastructure developments, including the oil and gas sector itself. Now, of course, we also have the development of the Kabale Petro-based industrial park that we envisage to host the refinery, the crude export hub, and the second international airport. And this is a unique project which we believe is going to propel us to industrialization by utilizing the oil and gas industry. And we also see synergies in light of value addition from the products that are going to come off the refinery, stretching into petrochem, fertilizer, cold chain, agro-based industries, and this will show a direct linkage between the oil and gas industry and other sectors of the economy. So is the plan that we have in line with the global net zero calls? Indeed, it is, but as long as it does not compromise the socio-economic good for the country. And I want to emphasize the fact that there is no project in Uganda that has ever been sanctioned off without a comprehensive environment and social impact assessment that is widely consulted, including public disclosures. And these environment and social impact assessments conform to globally recognized standards, and including the resettlement action plan that is usually of the highest standard to include livelihood restoration. And of course, the technical designs themselves are informed by many studies to inform or to address any environmental and social issues. Now, I hear people when they start arguing about the ECOP, and ECOP has become the face of media with a lot of backlash from environmental activists. But here's the facts. The legal provisions for the host government agreement and the intergovernment agreement have given provisions for environmental and social safeguards for the project. The project has a certification from the NEMA, or the National Environment Management Authority. It's in compliance with the Equator principles on pipeline routing, land acquisition, and social aspects. And it has gotten social buy-in from the communities. The design is robust and it integrates intrusion detection, surveillance systems detection, and whatever technical designs that allow us to maintain the protocols of saving the environment. The material selections has been really deliberately chosen to make sure that it's accommodative of the environment that we are dealing with. There is internal corrosion control, external corrosion control. There is, and again, most people project ECOP to be a surface equipment that is going to run 1,443 kilometers from Hoima to Tanga. But hey, this is a buried pipeline and it's transporting waxy crude that at ambient condition is going to form like shoe polish. So people, I think, are talking from the perception of not understanding the level of engineering and the level of considerations that have been made to protect the environment. But indeed, ECOP has been structured in whichever way to conform to technical designs that are going to protect the environment, protect the people who are being displaced, and also contingency planning to accommodate any potential spill, and also accommodate compliance to human rights. And the same happens to the other projects, the same for the upstream. We've seen Total and CNOOC trying to comply to the highest levels of standards, implementing technological solutions in an eco-sensitive environment, accommodating excess gas to convert it to LPG, robust waste management plans. So the list is endless. So when we talk about our plans for net zero, they are accommodated right from project planning up to project execution until we get these resources out of the ground. Now, oftentimes people ask us whether we should just focus on development and forget about the net zero ambitions. Absolutely not. We are not ignoring the fact that we have to take care of the environment, but we also do not want to ignore the fact that we have to eradicate energy poverty, and oil and gas resources are going to play a very fundamental role in the energy mix. But we'll do this in a sustainable manner, and there's clear demonstration, like I've said, in the technical, social, and the contingency requirements within the projects. Of course, we intend to develop other initiatives to create an environment where we are reducing the CO2 emissions. We are in a current drive to plant 40 million trees around Uganda to offset the emissions. And also, we must not forget that we have a moral obligation, a moral duty to eradicate energy poverty for our citizens and transform our economies as we use, and we'll use the oil and gas resources to do that. So to your point, of course, we need to be proactive. Proactiveness is going to be key in this process rather than being reactive as an industry. We are a targeted industry, but we need to be pragmatic to demonstrate our ability to coexist with climate concerns while addressing the socio-economic needs for our nations. So yes, we will adhere to net zero ambitions, but in doing so, we should not compromise the socio-economic good for the people of our countries. And I guess the same goes across the other African countries. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much, madam. I have a question for you, Kani. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand you have other commitments to rush to. So my question to you is, if I use Nigeria as an example, irrespective of the government and private sector's commitment for advancing renewable energy, we do know that there are hindrances, sometimes from the policy perspective, other times they are technical. For example, in Nigeria, there are certain undesirable fiscal terms, especially around import frameworks, tariffs and taxes that serves as a disincentive to the aggressive expansion of renewables in a nation like Nigeria. So coming to your country, where we have delightful news coming out in terms of government's agenda for advancing renewables, what do you perceive to be the hurdles? What do you see as the potential barriers to renewable energy development in the Gambia?
Thank you very much, Dr. Chijoke, for that. I just have to shout out Proscovia. I had, a very frustrated feeling listening to her espouse, how they are trying to sustainably and responsibly develop their hydrocarbon resources. I think UNOC is really setting the model for Africa going forward. Now to your question, the barriers to the scaling up of renewable energy in the Gambia is basically the barriers that all third world countries will be facing. First of all, we have capacity constraints on a technical basis. So any renewable energy project would need to really address capacity development, because the technical expertise for the deployment of renewable energy projects are not there. And of course, we have the issue with policy alignments, which really we have worked on with the Renewable Readiness Assessment Report that was released a couple of years ago. And we also have a renewable energy law. So all of these have been helping to sort of steer the policy alignment agenda. We also have regulatory constraints. We have constraints regarding financing for renewable energy fund. As per the Renewable Readiness Assessment Report that we developed, we should have set up a renewable energy fund. I don't think we've gone very far with that. We have some very, I would say, really in the large scale of things, negligible. Okay, I'm government. I have to step back. In the large scale of things, the impact. We're very grateful to UNIDO, who are our project partners in setting up some sort of renewable energy funds. But in reality, the funding is not enough. And this is the main issue with renewable energy projects worldwide, but especially in Africa. In the West, they are massively successful because they're massively subsidized. We have heard of the failure of the wind turbine projects in Scotland, which needs to be subsidized at a scale of 1.8 million pounds every week, because they haven't figured out how to store the excess energy from the wind turbines. They actually also have to shut them down, and because they haven't figured out, again, how to supply it at cheaper cost. And so they have to shut it down so the consumers have access to cheaper electricity and energy sources. I mean, Africa obviously cannot afford that. We literally rely on aid. The monies we get from our fossil fuel developments are not enough. So there's no way we can expect to be subsidizing large-scale renewable energy projects. Renewable energy projects are not always bankable and commercially feasible. These are the issues we are facing. But of course, there's a lot of technical considerations as well in our current electricity and our transmission and distribution network. So most of the solutions we're looking at have to be off-grid. And I think one of the things that we usually neglect, which I personally, this is my personal opinion, I feel like it has been massively neglected in our RRA Renewable Readiness Assessment Report, is the potential of using LPG for household energy needs. Because 90% of our household, over 90% actually, of our household energy needs in the Gambia and in Africa in general are based on biomass. So the RRA report has focused on improved use of biomass and cook stove rather than the deployment of, for example, LPG cooking gas. And so we, even if you look at the IRENA reports, the IEA reports, you would see that the places where we're going to get the most impact in terms of renewable or energy efficiency, rather, not renewable energy, in terms of energy efficiency, would be in the use of gas. So the barriers really, like I've said, they're technical, they're policy, they're regulatory, they're fiscal, as Mr. Ayik pointed out. There's also the lack of standards that we don't have in the Gambia for renewable energy deployment. We have to look again at our tariff settings. We have to look at quality control and standard settings. And of course, even access to information for the players who are interested in accessing climate funds. They have found the process to be extremely technical and complex. So we are told that the climate funds are there, but in effect, the SMEs and the MSMEs, which are the small and medium scale enterprises, really cannot access these funds because of the complexities required. So it's like a barrier of access to information on how to access some of the climate change funds out there. I'm afraid I would have to leave just after this. I am joining the panel from London at a summit that I am in, and I've been having issues finding a quiet enough place. So excuse the unsteadiness of my video. I'm using my phone, but it has been an absolute pleasure, Dr. Chijoke and Mr. Kamal, Mr. Koskovio, Mr. NJ Ayu. And of course, I was very heartened by the opening keynote earlier delivered by the Honorable Minister Timipre, delivered by Engineer Justice Depareka on behalf of the Honorable Minister. It has been an absolute pleasure joining you. I look forward to continuing to be a part of the conversation. Mr. Engineer Justice Depareka said earlier, with repetition comes penetration. And I believe it's these conversations that cause the messages to be repetitive enough in order that we can penetrate the capital markets, the Bretton Woods institution, the policymakers that are stifling Africa's fossil fuel development and growth in tandem with climate change objectives. Thank you so much. I wish you all a great day. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, delighted to get your perspectives, on the hurdles that renewable energy is facing in your country, the Gambia. Thank you once again, Mrs. Kani. May I pose the next question, to Mr. Victor Bandele? I'm looking to see if there are lessons from a corporate organization's push within the energy transition framework for a country like Nigeria. Nigeria has commitments, to lower carbon emission by 2060, which, is our nationally determined contribution. But given Total's progress so far, do you think there are lessons within your programs and agenda that a nation like Nigeria could possibly adopt?
Yes, thank you so much, moderator. I think I'm the best to answer that question on behalf of my country. Really, I think there are good lessons that we've learned, and I'll put it in perspectives. So first, there is one phrase that I like. It's for anything that we want to do, we need to be deliberate, and I think we need to position ourselves and tell ourselves what exactly we want to do, how do we want to do it. In my first intervention, I spoke about some things that we had done as far back as 2000 to take a deliberate position and say, okay, for every new project that we bring in on the table, we have to find best gas utilization mechanism that accompanies such projects. As of 2000, there was no talk about transition. There was no talk about net zero and things like that. But a company like Total Energies, and at that time, had taken a decision, especially for Africa, that when you want to start a new project, you need to make that new project to be compatible with developing the associated gas that goes with the oil. So I still maintain it that we need to be deliberate and to tell ourselves what we want to do, and we go for it. In Nigeria, for example, I stand on all protocols here. It's the country that is maybe more blessed in gas than oil. But if you ask me how much quantum, what's the quantity of gas that we utilize very well within the domestic market, it's not significant. It's not something that we are proud of as a country. I think we've focused so much on export that we have not looked too sufficiently inwards into the local market, into the market within Africa. We have so many countries that are landlocked and do not have gas or oil resources in Africa. All these countries import oil and gas. But let's look at it. What's the network that we have for gas, domestic gas utilization within Africa? So I challenge Africa, and I say, instead of wasting so much time, and I see the urgency that has come from my friend, the urgency is to look inwards into Africa and say, what deliberate actions are our governments taking towards making gas accessible to all? If we consider, and we have agreed collectively that that is the real trend, that is what can really make our energy requirement, make us meet our energy requirement, it's really gas. And if you look at the network in Europe, almost every country is connected by gas. We are not in that space now. But if you look at the quantum of gas that we export collectively as Africa, compared to what we use internally, it's a far cry. So I think there is a deliberate action that we need to adopt. A company like Total Energies, we're doing our best. I can tell you that we have a pipeline in the east of the Niger Delta that was deliberately constructed as far back as 2012 by the joint venture between NNPC and Total Energies to serve as a corridor for domestic gas utilization in the east of Nigeria. And so we have a few companies, a few users connecting to this pipeline. But when you look at the quantum of gas taken off this line compared to what we export as a country, it's still a far cry. So I think there is a deliberate action that needs to be put in place if we really are serious. Our policies, government policies, needs to be refocused, and I see very good progress that we've made as a country in Nigeria, for example, with the passage of the PIA, which make at least the terms of operation became a bit clearer than what we used to have before. So with clarity and with determination and making it to be favorable to people that will develop or expand the projects in gas, I think that is another incentive for people to invest in that area. We need to drive or to attract investment. There's nowhere where you can develop big projects like this where it will be done purely internally. Honestly, when you look at the quantum or the amount of funds available to African countries for the development of this project, it is a far cry from what is required. So we need to have policies that attract business, that attract people that will invest their monies, invest their capital into this. And we need to have very close monitoring for all the projects that I've mentioned concerning Total Energies. For each of them, you have a leader of the project. You have somebody that is following up on that project and looking at all the ways to optimize to make sure that it works. We need sustainable leadership. It shouldn't be just policies that are read by one. When this government comes in place, he makes these policies, it's no longer followed by another government. I think it should be, our policies should be greater than the people that are acting on them. So really, when you say the learning points, I know that I've been in Total Energies for close to 30 years. I have not seen one project that stops because there is a change in the managing director or there is a change in the CEO of the company. So we really have to have sustainability in the projects that we put in place, on the decisions that we have taken at a time. We need to follow it to the end, and we need to really take all the benefits of it. I think I can stop there. If you leave me, I can continue and continue.
Thank you very much. You did touch on a number of key issues, which is around policy flip-flops. Most countries in sub-Saharan Africa are known to jeopardize investment by refusing to be, firm or decisive or deliberate, as you frequently use that word, on policy frameworks. As we normally say, nobody will put shovel on the ground, which translates to, investment if the policy framework is not clear. Fortunately for us, Nigeria has made some significant progress in the last few years, having passed the Petroleum Industry Act, which is now providing attractive frameworks or incentives for continued investment in the energy space. Other countries are still going through that kind of reform, which gives investors the kind of courage and clarity that they require. May I please ask SP President, Mr. Kamel, could you please shed more light on SP's participation in the growing interest for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which is a technology that promises to decarbonize or help the hydrocarbon industry to reduce its emission or possibly eliminate it completely, especially if you come from the perspective of blue hydrogen production from natural gas. What is the state of things, for SPE around this technology? Do you encourage investments in R&D? Are you involved in aggressive advocacy for CCU, being a promising technology for a clean fossil industry? Mr. Camille, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's an extremely important one. And I would say that one, we believe that energy transition will require the use of CCUS at a scale that is significantly larger than where it is today. Today, if I take every project where we inject CO2, and most of them are with CO2 enhanced oil recovery, we're injecting 35 million tons. Where we need to be in a net zero scenario by 2050 is 100 times more than that number. So we should be in the billions of tons stored per year, where we are only in a few millions today. So obviously we can do without CCUS, but the cost of the energy transition will rise quite significantly, as demonstrated by the IPCC report. So it's absolutely a necessary technology. Now, the oil and gas industry has shown leadership in this area with the Sleipner project in Norway in 1996. So we've been injecting CO2 without any leakage for the last 25 years in that 1 million tons per year. And now we have projects that have gone up above the 3 million tons per year. So we are increasing in scales. And I'm referring to a recent analysis by Rystad Energy, a consulting firm, which sees that within a decade, we could be in the 500 million tons of CO2 injected per year. So that is quite a huge undertaking. So what does it take? It needs to have geoscientists, it needs to have our skills of petroleum engineers. And we as the SPE, we have created a strong community on CCUS, which basically we call a technical section on carbon services. And we are also have joined forces with other organizations to have carbon management conferences. We, as I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of developing a carbon storage resource management system, which will provide the industry with tools to assess the volume of CO2 that could be used for storage. So all that are part of the CO2, and we have many events, technical sections that are involved in this area. And finally, we do have two great initiatives that I wanted to mention. One of them is the Sustainable Development Technical Section, which has over 1,000 members around the world. And we do have the Gaia Sustainability Framework, and we do have a number of very active members throughout Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are far gone with the allotted time, for this panel, and I do believe most of the panelists are providing rich perspective to the discussion. I would like to give each panelist a minute, to make a closing remark. But prior to that, I have one question for Mr. Ayok, for the individual remarks. Is Africa Energy Change, Africans, I mean African governments, policy makers, business leaders, CEOs, activists, what is your central message for Africa in this energy transition? Mr. Ayok, are you still here? The MCs, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Do we still have Mr. Ayok with us?
We can
No,
ask
not
the
at the moment.
panelists until he comes back.
Perhaps it's no longer. Oh, okay. Okay, please, may I invite the rest of the speakers to take a minute to give us their closing speeches. I'd like to start with Mr. Victor Bandele, please.
Yeah, thanks again. I will really try to be within 1 minute. It's very challenging. So really, I think in summary of my submissions, I think I want to emphasize on the need for collaboration, a lot of collaboration between African countries to really mature the gas network, to make mature transactions between countries that leads to optimum utilization of the resources that we create internally in Africa. It's a one good way of increasing the level of utilization of the resources, and at the same time creating opportunities for even blossoming the energy mix in a manner that over time we'll be able to move from fossil fuel into other renewable energies. If you don't have the initial energy, you cannot build on the future energy. So I think the action for African leaders and for all of us that are participants in this discussion is to really push ourselves into that framework where we are able to expand the transition energy, which we have acclaimed and we have all agreed it is gas. Secondly, I would like for us to preach it, to act it, and to be very deliberate about it, that it's not in all cases that we have to follow the trend. We need deliberate actions from ourselves to make the industry to blossom. We need to collaborate, we need to cooperate, we need to, within companies, we need to take best benefits of what is existing in one place that can be extended to others in technology and in human resources. We don't have to start the whole process of what has worked in one place and then we start it all over in another place. We need to take benefits of what Nigeria has done and apply it to some other countries that are just starting, for example. Thank you so much. And it's been a very big opportunity and a very insightful discussion from other panelists. I'm really, really excited that I participated in this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. May I please call on Madam Proskovia to give a closing speech?
Thank you so much, moderator. I think for me, some of the key issues for consideration from an African perspective is the need to increase access to modern forms of energy, the need to reduce the infrastructure gap in generation capacity to meet the growing demand, because we are seeing a lot of population growth and demand for energy, the financing is another aspect that we need to consider. And I'm glad to hear novel solutions that are being created within Africa, like the Energy Bank for Africa that NJ talked about. Collaboration, not only as Africans in the sector, but collaboration from the perspective of different forms of energy. The entire ecosystem has to coexist. The different energy sources need to be maintained rather than eliminating one. And we need to have a balanced approach, and not only balanced, but equitable towards the economic development of African countries and climate action. That is very key. No one size fits all, and we need to ask ourselves the switching mechanism. And indeed, one of the panelists asked a question, switching from what to what? Because there are key parameters we need to meet in case someone is switching from one form of energy to another. It must be available, it must be accessible, it must be affordable, and it must be sustainable. If the form of energy we are transitioning to doesn't meet that criteria, then it's not going to be sustainable. And then, of course, I always tell people that while the Western world creates the same yardstick for Africa, I always try to compare it to labor pains. I always tell people that energy poverty is like labor pains. If you haven't gone through it, you have no right to describe it. And if we continue with the myopia of eradicating fossil fuels at a goal like a flip switch, then we are not doing any favor for society or humanity. And as an industry, we have that moral obligation to our people to provide access to power, access to education, access to good health systems, boost agriculture, create jobs, technology transfer, and save the revenue for future generations by prudently harnessing our oil and gas resources. And as an industry, we have a good template, at least for the oil and gas industry, through research and development. We can learn from the shortfalls, and by doing what we do best as an industry, which is technology, innovation, efficient systems in supply chain, while maintaining the focus on preventing harm to the environment, I believe will awaken the minds of others and inspire them to see the fundamental good and contribution our industry will make for socio-economic transformation for Africa. So we can ultimately be part of the solution rather than being looked at as a major part of the problem. I thank you so much. It's been a fantastic session, and I look forward to more sessions to come.
Thank you very much, Madam. Mr. Campbell, please, can we have your closing speech?
Yeah, thank you very much for a fantastic session. I really enjoyed the insights from the other panelists. And from an SPE standpoint, we strongly believe that Africa has a key role to play in the energy sector for the coming decades. It was highlighted that natural gas is, in terms of available energy, the cleanest, and certainly Africa could develop those resources. We are very pleased to see new basins coming, like the Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia basin, which is a new play to produce natural gas. And we heard some great comments from the colleagues from Uganda. And so from our standpoint, Africa needs to focus on three areas. One is producing those resources with the lowest emissions footprint, reducing significantly flaring, reducing emissions in all parts of the upstream, midstream, and downstream. The second part is find synergies with new technologies like hydrogen, and see, for instance, if blue hydrogen and a green hydrogen could be developed in tandem. And then the third one, extremely important, is to have the infrastructure inside the countries to get the largest access to the Africans in terms of energy, because it is an essential part of the development.
Thank you very much. May I just please check once again, do we still have Mr. NJ Ayuk with us? Okay, in the absence of that, we have come to the end of this wonderful session. I was quite delighted, to participate in this, taking very useful insights from the panelists and forming an opinion that will influence decisions for energy access expansion in Africa. We did receive a lot of questions from the audience, but for the lack of time, we will be unable to pose these questions to the panelists. We advise that you can forward your questions to an email address to be provided by SPE Lagos, and then this can be pushed to the panelists for response. So the questions can be forwarded to sectionsadmin@spelagos.org, sectionsadmin@spelagos.org. Thank you once again, our audience and participants, for finding time to come and listen to this. Thank you, SPE Lagos Technical Symposium organizers, for this wonderful symposium. At this point, I would like to pass the microphone, if there is any, back to the MCs. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our moderator, for the panel session, for driving that in that very exciting and learning session, which we have been able to actually gather some information. Just to reiterate on some of the things that was said during the panel session, that there's a need for collaboration between the African countries for effective transitioning. It's not just we are transitioning, but we as an African countries, we as an African continent, we have to come together as individual countries to collaborate together for that effective transitioning. Also, there's a need to increase access to the diverse forms of energy. We have to be able to access it, not just us knowing that these energies are available. We have to be able to tap into those energy sources and utilize it as we please. And finally, just to reiterate some of the things that the SPA president said, he said we need to focus on 3 areas: reducing emissions, not just in the upstream, but also in the midstream and the downstream. We also need to have the need for synergy with new technologies, synergies with new sources of energy. And lastly, he said we have to have access, the infrastructure to accessing these energies. And I believe with that, we have been able to get more knowledge from where we were before this panel session, and we've gained more knowledge now that the panel session has come to an end. A lot of questions came in, like the moderator said, and also we'll be typing the emails on the chat box for you to drop your questions, and believe it will be attended to as we proceed. For the vote of thanks in this other remaining session of this events for the one, we'll be inviting the SP Africa Regional Director, Mrs. Ogogo Efiam, to give us the vote of thanks. Kindly confirm you can hear us, ma'am. I know you're online. I can see your video, just to confirm you can hear. I can't hear you. I see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. We can still hear you. We probably have difficulties with the audio.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now loud and clear.
Okay, great. I figured it out. There was something else connected in the background. What an amazing event this has been. I can't express to you how proud I am of what the section has done in the last 2 days. And it fills me with a lot of humility and pride and immense gratitude to all the guest speakers who accepted to speak today at today's event. It confirms what we have already always suspected and known, that the solutions to Africa's problems are within Africa. We are going to solve our own problems by ourselves. We have what it takes and we have who it takes. So I want to thank our speakers, our erudite speakers, who dedicated the time not just to educate us, to challenge us, and of course to encourage us. And I also know that we have a number of younger people also on the call who are also learning a lot from what we have said. There are also a number of technocrats on the call as well. And I want to thank everyone for dialing in. I want to thank our attendees, both SPE members and non-members. For those who are non-members, I hope you see the value that SPE brings and it encourages you to continue your membership. For those of you who are members, thank you very much for joining. Please continue to give us your feedback. I will continue to bring you the kind of programming that adds value, not just to you as a person, but to your country and to your also to the entire Africa. As you can see, we're trying to expand our reach beyond just Nigeria, but to bring programs that pull the rest of Africa together. That is indeed our desire as SPE. I would like to thank the SPI president. I know he's not in the same time zone as we are, but he made his time to be here today. So thank you, Kamal, for being here. I really appreciate your time with us. And of course, I want to thank the SPE volunteers. I mean, these are folks who have spent days, nights, weeks, weekends, a lot of time. They spent a lot of time pulling together events like this to be able to meet the aspirations of our members and of our communities and our societies at large. And I just want to thank each and every one of our volunteers for all the blood and sweat and tears that have gone into putting up this kind of an event. It really shows how much of an effort went into pulling all of this together. I'd like to thank my moderator. Sir, you were fantastic. Thank you. I couldn't have asked for a much better moderator than yourself. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. And then I will hand over to the moderators, to the MCs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that vote of thanks. Next on the agenda, which is the last thing for today, is the announcement, and I would like to use this opportunity to invite the section chairperson for Uganda, engineer Mr. Katso Budaya, to give the announcement. Over to you now, sir.
Thank you very much, Samuel. It's been a very good session. Good to be here. Is it okay if I can share my screen? My end?
Yes, you can.
Let me know if you can see my screen, someone.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Anything yet?
Okay. Yes, it has come up.
It has come up. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be taking you through the upcoming activities that have been prepared by the two different sections, and that is the SPE International Lagos section and SPE International Uganda section. So tomorrow we shall be continuing with the technical symposium and exhibition. It's been a very insightful session to listen to the African perspective on the energy transition. And I would like to invite you once again to join us for tomorrow's event. And then on 1st June, still the SBE Lagos section shall have another webinar series on the future of LNG, past, present, and future, which is also a very good discussion to have. On top of that, SBE Cares program is an initiative by SBE Cares to give back to community. And the SBE Lagos section will be implementing a family fun walk or run where you can donate towards solar power for the less privileged on the 28th of May, 2022. You are invited to be part of this event. Coming to the other slide, we can see that in case you'd like to get more information concerning the SBE Lagos section, you can get them on their social handles such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channel. Over to the right, we look at SBE Uganda section for this month. We shall also be having an SBE Cares initiative for the mothers. We're looking at, we have collaborated with Mother Center here, a center that looks at teen mothers, and we shall be supporting them this Saturday 21st as we reach out and facilitate them with the basic needs, but also support them and give them some counseling as well. And this will be an event by the SBE Uganda section board. They'll be reaching out to these teen mothers. On top of that, we still run our professional lectures where we get fellow Ugandans who are presenting on various topics, as you heard from our ARD, the solution is in Africa. And so we're exploring this option quite a lot. So we have a professional lecture for the stakeholder engagement in oil and gas projects that is scheduled for Thursday, 26th May 2022. And that's next week. And we shall be sharing all this information about upcoming events on our Twitter handle, on our Facebook, and on our LinkedIn platforms. Once again, you're invited to visit our SBE website to get to see the recent events. This link will be shared in the chat. But overall, I appreciate our audience and distinguished guests as well for being part of this technical symposium. Thank you very much, and I hand over back to our moderator. Back to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obare Kato. Indeed, you have taken us through legal section and Uganda section's activities for the upcoming days. A very big thank you to our panelists, our keynote speakers, the organizers of this event, legal section, the Uganda section, the tech team behind the scene who has been able to ensure that the virtual space was duly appropriated and no hitch-up was given during the course of these few hours events. I just want to remind you that today was great, but tomorrow would be better because we're having a day 2 of this event, whereby we'll be experiencing some presentations and exhibitions from members of SP. Also, it will be happening at the Grand Ballroom Echo Hotels and Suites in Lagos from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the sacrifices. Thank you very much for volunteering to be here today. We appreciate and we do not take it for granted. Thank you very much. Do have a lovely day and see you tomorrow.